Is this Prince Harry's most damaging moment yet? Who is trying to rebuild Prince Andrew's reputation? Is King Charles just doing too much? And how did Prince Louis steal the show? Oh, have we got a show for you today? Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin, and on today's panel is the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, the Mail on Sunday's editor-at-large, Charlotte Griffiths, and the Daily Mail's diary editor, Richard Eden. Welcome to you all. Now, did you know around 430,000 of you subscribe to this channel? And if you're not one of them yet, why not? Are you okay? Because it doesn't cost anything, but it does guarantee you are notified whenever we put out a new show, like the one we did earlier this week when we were live outside Buckingham Palace, if you don't mind, for a special episode covering the VE Day celebrations, which featured many of your favourite royals on the Buckingham Palace balcony. Now, if you missed it, we'll play that after this programme finishes so you don't have to go anywhere. That's convenient and delightful of us, isn't it? There you go. Well, we're going to stay with the VE Day celebrations because it only contained our favourite clip of the entire week, and for some time, to be quite honest with you. I am, of course, talking about Prince Louis appearing to mock Prince George, his big brother, for the way he moves his hair away from his face. Rebecca, talk us through this.
That was adorable. I think any parent can relate, with multiple children can relate to this. Yeah.
Weary older sibling as well. I think.
Weary older sibling here.
Hello, yes.
And it was just such a natural moment that you could see him glance at Prince George, and Prince George was doing, I think, what a lot of, slightly self-conscious 11-year-olds doing, making sure his hair's right. And it was just the way Louis just kind of went, like that, and then it was the standout moment of that whole parade.
I wonder if the interaction had been slightly different if they weren't on camera for the world to see.
No, well, can I just say, by the way, on our VE coverage, I was looking at some of the comments from people who were watching our coverage. And can I just say thank you, because so many people put comments in talking about their own family experiences of serving in the Second World War. I don't know if you noticed that as well, Richard. And it was just saying it was so lovely. It was just so lovely to see our viewers expressing those experiences. So
it was such a unifying moment, isn't it? I don't think anyone who was there that day will forget what it was like to be in that atmosphere.
And a lot of our viewers, I think, from places like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, was saying, don't forget, the Commonwealth, members of the Commonwealth who served in the Second World War. So I just want to say thank you for those comments.
Commonwealth member here, I promise you we won't forget. But just quickly back to Louis, I mean, it's a long day for a 7-year-old, isn't it, Charlotte? But I think that, the kids on the whole did very well.
They did such a good job. And, Louis obviously delighted us with his comedy double act. I hope they continue to be a comedy double act as they grow up, by the way, and never fall out. But also,
yes. There's not a great track record on that, but yeah.
Let's not even go there.
But it's lovely, that camaraderie. But I thought George as well did a good job. It was really his first official engagement. Later on he went to the Buckingham Palace tea party and he met with veterans. And one of the veterans, who I think was 99, said, it's really important for this generation to meet us because there's not many of us left. And really, this is the last chance for somebody of that age to meet somebody as old as he was, and for them to remember that going forward. And I thought they did a great job all day long, really.
I thought what was reassuring about Prince Louis there is, Prince George, obviously he's a future king and everything, but it's good that he's got a younger brother who's not scared to, put him down a peg or two.
Keeps him grounded, yeah, it does. He is going to keep him grounded forever. If he ever gets too regal,
exactly.
Louis will be there.
And I got the impression from George's reaction that he is used to it.
Exactly. Again, as all older siblings are. The younger ones know how to push our buttons.
Yeah. It was just the way George looked at him, and then Louis started like knocking his head. I don't think I was doing anything really.
He was trying to cover it up, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was very
busted.
cute.
Well, he's just reached that more sort of self-conscious age, hasn't he,
George?
Bless
him.
Oh, it's so
but
sweet.
The people I know who were at the tea party were saying he was genuinely adorable and brilliant there, and really looking in the veterans in the eye and asking them about U-boats and tanks. It's obviously something he's clearly been studying at school and at home, and they said he really conducted himself with aplomb. It was really encouraging to see, and I think a nice way for the Prince and Princess of Wales to just test the water a little bit, to just give him an idea of what this life is like that he's got stretching ahead of him, but not in a way that frightens him. So I thought it was fantastic.
He's looking so grown up, but he's not the only one, because Richard, we also saw a new royal portrait this week, didn't we?
Yes, I mean, it's easy to forget because this was released. It's a birthday portrait of Princess Charlotte, and it was released the day of Prince Harry's interview with the BBC. So that did have the unfortunate consequence of sort of overshadowing it, which was a great shame. But it was a beautiful portrait, really good, taken by her mother, Catherine, who it sort of embodied that sort of the reaction between them, you know, that a mother's great at getting that really natural, relaxed response from her daughter. It was taken, she was wearing camouflage jacket because they'd been on some hike in Cumbria. But it was the real sort of outdoorsy young girl, and she just looked really happy and enjoying herself. And I thought it was a lovely portrait that seemed to really capture her spirit.
10 years already. Goodness me, it's crazy, isn't it? Well, we'll have a look at a couple of other royal portraits a bit later on in the show. But speaking of our Richard, he got among the crowds at VE Day to meet his fans. Sorry, fans of the royal family, of course. Let's have a look.
Did you get your hair specially done?
I did, yes.
Oh, it's great. Magnificent.
Thank you.
Who are you looking forward to seeing?
I'm looking forward to seeing the flyover, especially, but I think it'd be brilliant to go and see all the Commonwealth troops also walking through.
And what made you want to be here?
I try and come to all the big events. I was here at the coronation and I came to pay my respects to the Queen, so I do like to come and join in for everything that's happening, yeah.
It'd be nice if Harry could get back with his dad, yes, and start speaking to his dad again.
And what did you think about Prince Harry giving that interview last week?
No comment.
Tell us about that, Richard. How was the atmosphere?
It was great, and you know, you often hear tales about sort of the monarchies becoming less popular. You know, people fed up with the royal family. We hear about, you know, various complaints and things, but my goodness, there were a lot of people there. There really were. I mean, we were filming in the Mall, and the crowds were, I'd say, you know, at least 20 deep. We were having to interview people at the back, essentially, and to explain to the viewers, the crowds were completely restricted because it was all sealed off area so that there wasn't a crush, and they kept numbers kind of manageable for the police. But it, you know, so there would have been thousands more who would have joined them. But it was a really good atmosphere, and people were there for all different sorts of reasons. People who wanted to remember VE Day and celebrate the contributions, lots of people from around the world, but also people there who were keen to see the royal family. And I think seeing Catherine and William and the children was a real attraction as well.
Yeah.
People loved that.
And dare I ask, any Palace fans among the throng?
Yeah, definitely. Although the hardcore royalists and royal fans tended to be at the front, whereas we were speaking to the people at the back.
Oh.
I noticed a lot of people took binoculars so they could get close-ups of, you know, the interaction between people on the
didn't
days.
you once have your own Periscope moment on that very spot?
Yes, you mentioned that when we were out there.
I know, I love this detail. Please tell for people who missed it. Yeah.
No, that was just, I joined the crowds as a very, very small boy for the wedding of Prince Andrew and Fergie. I think we had some friends over from Canada at that time and they joined us. But I was very small, crowds were very big, so I was given a periscope to try to sort of see above people's heads, but I don't think it worked very well.
So
and
cute.
I didn't see much, but I enjoyed the atmosphere just as I think people did on Monday. And we should say, you know, today is VE Day, Thursday.
Yeah.
It was only celebrated on Monday because it was a bank holiday, and you know, the government thought that would give people a chance to take part.
And we
Indeed.
did have a big a service of commemoration at Westminster Abbey, which all the senior royals will be at today. King, the Queen, Prince and Princess of Wales, you know, the Edinburghs, the Gloucesters, the Kents. So, you know, we're going to have another very big turnout today and a big concert at Horse Guards Parade tonight. So.
Incredible. Well, you mentioned Prince Andrew there a moment ago, and I'm sorry, I am going to have to raise the subject. He was a much discussed subject of conversation in our comments this week. And Rebecca, there was an interesting piece by Richard Pendlebury in the Mail at the weekend that I just thought was worth raising at this point.
Yeah, I thought this was a really fascinating piece as well. It was highlighting the investigation that Richard did along with one of my other colleagues, Steve Wright, and they are really forensic journalists. You know, the way they investigate pieces is incredibly powerful. And it turns out that several years ago, they were given access by kind of Team Andrew to flight logs, emails, records, as part of their attempts to try and clear his name and reputation in public over the whole Epstein, Virginia Giuffre scandal. And I don't think the article was what they were hoping it would be, because Richard found that these documents he was given access to actually raised more questions than they did answer them.
Twas ever thus with our Andrew.
It was pretty damning. I mean, they both admit there are holes in both Prince Andrew and the late Virginia Giuffre's stories. You know, neither quite ring true, but if Andrew's team was hoping this was going to be a giant exoneration of him, it was the absolute opposite.
And Richard Pendlebury's conclusion was pretty stark, wasn't it?
It was very stark, yeah.
Say so? What?
Well, I think I'd encourage people to read the article and kind of draw their own conclusion.
We'll put a link to that in. But Charlotte, it does feel like it is going to be very difficult to really wipe clean his name.
I think so, and Richard's article also said that if her death, if Virginia's death, you know, if there's any hope of the allegations disappearing, you know, that quite the opposite. It's made them indelible, he said. So really, I don't think he'll ever escape this whole sorry saga.
Yeah, just to add, obviously, that Prince Andrew does strenuously deny all allegations in relation to him and Virginia Giuffre. Right, let's move on because we want to talk about your comments now, and we'll start with a question from Mark Ashworth. He writes, "Hello, Joe. Love PC." Oh, thanks, Mark. Hi. We watch it every Thursday. Quick question. What is going to happen to Buckingham Palace? No one lives in it, do they? I think the King and Queen stay at Clarence House mainly when they're in London. Will the Prince and Princess of Wales and the children move in when William becomes king? If not, what's the long-term plan? Do you know? Mark from Olseley, Warwickshire. Well, I'll be honest with you, Rebecca, I have no earthly idea. Do you know?
Good astute question actually from Mark, so well done. So Buckingham Palace has been undergoing this massive 10-year, £369 million renovation because it's had actually very little work done to it since the Second World War. So we haven't really had any members of the royal family living in it for kind of 6, 7, 8 years, and they're now reaching the final part of that refurbishment. They are the last bit to be refurbished is actually the late Queen's suite of rooms that she lived in the palace. So we're not going to see anyone move back into those for a couple of years more to come. The staff are there working, so we've got a fully working palace, but not one that members of the royal family live in. Now, the intention is that the King and the Queen will move into those rooms and use them. But I personally think they will keep Clarence House on as well. It is what they see as their home in London.
Yeah.
And I can't see that changing massively personally. And something the King has actually said is he wants to make sure that Buckingham Palace is more, kind of earns its keep, and he wants to see it open more to the public during the year. So that I think will change the balance.
That's the thing, because what is the public perception of having a fully funded palace that isn't actually used that much by the royal family?
Well, except it is used because it is the seat of power. It's where all the offices are, where all the staff are, it's where all the entertaining is. So it is a fully functioning palace. It's just whether the head of state sleeps over in it. That's
but we're
the
still
only part
paying
of the
for
room.
2 palaces.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Clarence House is not a palace, it's a private home, and it's existed in the royal family for years.
These nuances become important when you're sort of fiddling around with text placement.
I think that will stay Charles and Camilla's residence from time immemorial, and I do think one day, my guess is that Prince George, when he's older, will move into it. That's my guess. But I think the Prince and Princess of Wales will keep on the kind of Windsor, Kensington Palace arrangement they've got for a while to come.
Wouldn't be a bad bachelor pad, would it? Clarence House?
Clarence House or Buckingham Palace would be a pretty good one.
Ironically, it's the home that we always thought Prince Harry would have if he'd stayed a working member of the royal family. Clarence House, yeah, that's what we thought. So we thought it would tend to go to him. But now, obviously, that's completely changed. My gut feeling is it will remain with Charles and Camilla and then go to Prince George.
Doesn't have enough bathrooms for Harry and Meghan. Haven't they got 13 and a half in Montecito?
And he was very angry that when Queen Camilla moved in, that she turned his bedroom there when he was growing up into a dressing room. He made a point of saying that in Spare. He wasn't very happy about that.
No.
Oh my goodness. Right, well, that's a great question, Mark. Thank you. I certainly learned a lot then. Now, after our discussion of the King's comments about his cancer diagnosis, we had this very nice message from Mary, who wrote, "I'm the same age as King Charles. I am a breast cancer survivor of 10 years. My husband lost his battle with cancer 19 years ago. My heart goes out to anyone affected by this disease. I have great respect for the King and Catherine for sharing their stories. Thank you so much for that lovely comment. All love to you. Now, regarding Meghan Markle using her Royal Highness titles, or HRH, when sending out products, the majority of our commenters seem to be against Meghan doing that. Chris Marie summed it up. The wording in the official statement from Buckingham Palace issued on January 18, 2020, does not distinguish between private or commercial use of the HRH. It reads, with the Queen's blessing, the Sussexes will continue to maintain their private patronages and associations. While they can no longer formally represent the Queen, the Sussexes have made clear that everything they do will continue to uphold the values of Her Majesty. The Sussexes will not use their HRH titles as they are no longer working members of the royal family. To me, that means the Sussexes will not use HRH under any circumstance. Interesting. Now, KB says, Palace Confidential is my favourite source for royal news. And quite right, not that we're biased. Harry said in his BBC interview that he was forced to step away from royal duty due to security concerns. I thought Harry and Meghan had decided to leave royal duty before the security assessment that downgraded their security coverage occurred. Can you help me understand Harry's statement? Rebecca, can you clear this one up?
Well, KB is spot on. Our readers are on fire this week.
You don't need us. Yeah.
And they're right, because they did make the decision. It wasn't anything to do with their security. That they wanted out for a number of reasons. They were unhappy. They weren't so happy with the structure. They wanted to make their own money. They wanted to pursue these independent lives. But obviously Harry has made subsequently security a big part of it because of his ongoing argument with the British government. So as the late Queen famously said, recollections may vary.
One of the most iconic quotes ever, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, in royal history, yeah.
Well, after our discussion last week about how members of staff at the royal palaces aren't very well paid, we had a couple of nice comments, none more so than this from Margaret Magnuson, who says, I will add my 2 cents about being an employee of the royal family. A good friend took a pay cut to go and work for the palace. He weighed up the pros and cons and made his decision. After 3 years, he was diagnosed with a life-altering illness that will be with him forever. And the palace have been phenomenal, even giving him an assistant to ease the daily work. So that certainly changed my mind. And that really chimes with a lot of what you were saying about people's loyalty to working for the royal family, doesn't it? I love that. Well, we do love all of your comments and questions, so do please keep them coming. But let's speak to my panel again now, and to the really rather unavoidable story of the week. Prince Harry, as you know, I'm sure, lost his case against the British government, who he wanted to provide police security while he was here in the UK. If that wasn't enough, he then gave another truly jaw-dropping interview to the BBC. Rebecca, if it's possible to do so quickly, remind us quickly what the judge said.
That's actually pretty easy to do, because the Master of the Rolls, one of the, I think the second most senior judge in our land, said, look, your arguments, they're clearly very emotional, they're powerful, they're persuasive in some ways, but they don't equate to an argument in law. And I uphold all of the other 2 rulings against you. Now, where Harry goes from here, I don't know, and we've obviously seen that he's had quite a kind of monumental hissy fit on television afterwards, to put it mild, and I'm sure we'll all go on to discuss that. But the judge was very, very clear on this point. You know, what you feel is a grievance does not equate to an argument in law.
And Richard, as understandable as it I'm sure is that he would be disappointed with that ruling, in the interview, Harry just seemed beyond furious.
He really did. And I mean, I have to be careful the way I phrase it, but I thought he sort of didn't look well almost in his kind of expression, his demeanour. You know, I mean, often if you're angry about something, people will say, well, why don't you sleep on it or whatever. This seemed to be something, and I think the BBC would confirm that it was done in a hurry. They were contacted and asked to do the interview. It wasn't people, you know, demanding an interview from him. It was very much his decision, and I think a very rash one. And he said a series of very unpleasant, provocative and dark, disturbing things, frankly. I mean, where to start? You know, we can say with the suggestion about it doesn't know how long his father had to live, which obviously increases speculation about the king's cancer. Then he was sort of hinting about dark forces. I mean, he was portraying the decision as an establishment stitch-up. And then you think, well, why did you go to court and spend £1.5 million in the first place if you thought it was a stitch-up and it wouldn't make any difference. So that was odd. But then he was hinting at evidence which he had seen, which wasn't made public, which he suggested showed that people, dark forces, were out to get him, and they wanted the same fate to befall him and his family as did his mother Diana. So really dark, and got you questioning. Certainly got me questioning his state of mind, frankly.
Can I just ask as well? Was I really the only one who it takes a lot to shock me with the behaviour sometimes? But I was really shocked to see him turn up in an interview again.
I was so shocked, and I was also really worried about him. He just seemed like a broken man, as you were alluding to. I just seemed like he was utterly broken and desperate. And I think that's why it was such a surprise, as you say. I think he just decided pretty much on a whim to have this hissy fit out of desperation and frustration. And, he made it clear he can't get hold of his father. It felt like it was the only way he could speak to his father or something. That might have been the motivation behind it.
It's interesting, isn't it, Charlotte? Because he talked of forgiveness, but there wasn't the other side of contrition or an apology, was there?
Yes, because he said, didn't he, my family may never forgive me for a lot of things, including the book. And I thought, well,
shocker.
You have to start by saying sorry if you want forgiveness. I would have thought that would open the conversation. But there was no sorry, was there? He didn't seem contrite. One thing that had changed was that he did clearly want to reunite with his family, but he just doesn't know how to do it because he'd have to swallow so much pride to get there, I think.
And I think the reason why he didn't say sorry is because he doesn't believe he's got anything to say sorry for. And I think the family and people around them believe he does.
At one point he did say something like, I've got no regrets or I wouldn't change anything, didn't he? About the interviews.
Well...
Yeah.
And also acknowledge, also acknowledge that, a lot of his family won't speak to him again because of the book.
Because they don't trust him, simple as that.
Yeah. And you wrote this week, Rebecca, that the court case has proven to be a personal catastrophe that has driven more of a wedge between himself and Charles than any backstabbing memoir or tell-all television series. It's not quite like, I'm not used to you having such strong statements.
Well, I think my job as a journalist is to bring both sides to people and to let our readers make up their mind. But I did write what was called an analysis, which I do feel I can bring a little bit more of my own opinion, but what I hear from the people I talk to that are at the heart of all of this. And as I've said on this programme before, and I wrote back in kind of September last year, around a big feature I did on Harry's 40th birthday, was that he doesn't seem to understand, either deliberately, willfully, or because he's just ignorant. His idea that his father could have stepped in and stopped all this is pie in the sky. For the king to interfere in this case would have caused a constitutional crisis because Harry is taking on his father's government in the courts that dispense justice in his name. And that is, it is a route that the king cannot go down. And as I said there, it's not that the king doesn't want to speak to his son, it's that he can't speak to him because there was a genuine fear that anything the king might have to say on this matter would immediately get back to Harry's lawyers and possibly twist it. You could have had the possibility where the King of England or the King of the UK should having to give evidence in a court case that his own son was bringing against his government. I mean, it sounds crazy to even say it out loud, but there was a genuine fear that could happen.
And here we are. Yeah.
There is something disturbing going on here, I think, in the sense that he talks about reconciliation. He wants that with his family. But if he did genuinely want that, you would never do that in a provocative interview on the BBC.
That's what puzzled me.
You would do it privately because he knew that this would upset his family even more and antagonise them. So then I'm thinking, come on, what's the real reason? Why have you given it? And I do worry that it's paving the way for what we're going to see in the future, which may be more about this subject. It may be another book. It may be, he's got a whole material. He's, alluding to all these dark forces and everything. There's more that he wants to say. And this is his way of justifying it. It's a sort of taster, a preview of what's to come.
These dark forces, I mean, aside from the rift with the family, I think that it's fair to say that some of the royals and their staff will be upset by some of the things he suggested in that interview, weren't they, Rebecca?
They were, because some aspects of it were really very, very disturbing. He effectively said that he believed there were people who actively wished him harm, and he felt that those people would see what happened as a win, as he described it. and he named, and I'm not going to name them here because I don't think it's fair, one senior member of staff and somebody else who was on the RAVEC committee, and he almost hinted that these people would be happy if harm were to come to him and his family, which is
That's a terrible thing to
disgraceful
say,
thing. It is disgraceful, especially because these people will never fight back publicly.
But if what you're saying about, you think he just looks really disturbed, perhaps he genuinely believes it.
But then surely there should be somebody in his life saying this is not the right way to go about things.
Yeah, that's, I think what we're going to move on to talk about is just what advice is he getting?
Yeah.
Who thought this was a good idea? Who would say that?
Well, I mean, who are his friends? Because at least one royal friend has spoken out against him, haven't they, Richard? You've written about that this week.
Yeah, so what I reported in the Social Diary was it was a childhood friend. It was Ben Goldsmith, and the Goldsmith family was so close to Princess Diana and her sons, from childhood onwards. And Ben spoke out and said that he thought Harry's behaviour has been unforgivable. Now, for him to say that publicly, what he did is very strong. And I've been speaking to people who said even stronger things privately than that. And the thing they highlight is that they're not able to reach him anymore. That he's got a very small number of friends from Britain that he stays in touch with, and those ones will not say anything because they fear being cut off.
Right.
So they think what's the point in saying something he doesn't want to hear, because then he won't speak to me again. So that for me is a worrying situation.
You're nodding along there. You know a lot of Harry's friends. Do you know anything about how they feel about this Harry we're seeing now?
Well, I mean, one thing you're very right about is the ones that are still friends with him will literally just hang up the phone because they themselves are paranoid. The ones that are still friends with him are really, really paranoid that Harry's kind of monitoring how much they do or don't speak to the media, which is in itself kind of crazy. But there is one person I spoke to, and his take on it was so interesting because he said that what they noticed about the interview it was that Harry was kind of speaking like he did in the old days before he moved to California. He was speaking in quite a British accent. I don't know if you've noticed, but in recent years, he's been quite Americanized. He'll say right at the end of sentences. And sometimes these interviews feel quite scripted, like it's got the fingerprints of somebody, perhaps Meghan, helping him form his choice of words. And what they noticed was he was speaking really off the cuff, like he used to do in the old days, not like a Californian prince, but like the old Prince Harry. And that maybe he was completely doing this on his own. And, we do know that Meghan wasn't backstage before, during, or after this interview. We know that it didn't take place in his home. And yeah, so a friend of mine just said, God, I remember him talking like that, 5-10 years ago kind of thing. And he's changed so much recently, but it was almost like the old him.
It's kind of a bit all over the place. Rebecca, after the furore over that interview, then Meghan posted something on Instagram that ruffled a few feathers.
Yeah, the word doubling down springs to mind.
You used some other words, actually.
I did use another, this was what was said to me, the instinctive reaction. I won't repeat it, because I know our Palace Confidential viewers have very delicate ears, but it was considered a bit of a sod you to the royal family and people around
and
us.
What is a picture of Harry and the children?
Exactly. So it was she often posts, over the weekend, or pictures of the children or her out in the gardens, publicising her business issues. But it's very notable, Harry doesn't really feature in these, and my understanding is that's because he doesn't want to. And yet suddenly 3 days after this is a picture of Harry in their garden with Lilibet on his shoulders holding Archie's hand. And I don't believe she does anything by chance, and I particularly don't believe he appeared in a picture by chance, and nor does anybody I spoke to. And they saw it as a very, he doesn't need you. He doesn't need you, okay? This is with him. This is with his family in California. This is his happy
Us
place.
Against the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a very, very deliberate. And people were like, if there was any sense of, contrition, clearly there isn't.
But
carry on, Charlotte. Yeah,
sorry, I'm so passionate about this picture as well because the first thing I thought was correct. It was a giant F you, and second of all, she wasn't listening to him because he was saying in the interview, "I'm desperate to go back to the UK. I do want to go home." I felt like reading between the lines, that picture was saying, screw you, we'll just stay in California forever. In which case, she's not taking on board his personal feelings. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't kind of psychologise.
I can't imagine he would have had no say in having that picture on Instagram, considering he hardly ever appears in her feed.
Yeah.
So
you do wonder whether he says no to her very often.
well, I don't know. But
every day it's a new surprise from those two. You never think it could get worse, and somehow it does. And I do think that picture really shows where they're at in terms of their attitude, really. It is that us against the world, screw everyone else kind of mentality. It's very sad.
And what do you think about this conspiracy theory that's been brewing a little bit in our comments section, Rebecca, where people wondering if Harry was suggesting that the royal family were denying security to sort of control him? Is there any credence in that?
He has suggested this quite a few times. His attitude is that they thought, we don't want you to go. So if we say we're going to take away your security, it'll have more chance of persuading you to stay within the confines of the royal family. But my understanding was, while they didn't want him to go, they fairly early accepted that actually this was the way things were going. So let's just try and find a way that we can have a happy medium. And I think one thing I was thinking, in kind of addition to what Charlotte was saying, is that Harry could have chosen to go on television on Friday if he really felt he wanted something to say, and he could have said, look, I'm really disappointed by the judgment that's been handed down, but I respect the sovereignty of the British court system, as he does when he has wins, and he has had wins in the British courts, but he doesn't seem very happy with sovereignty when it goes against him. I hope my family can understand that this comes from a very genuine place, and this is something I'd like to work with them moving forwards. He chose not to do that, and someone used the phrase to me to coin a kind of popular phrase with the kids. He chose violence. He chose not to say something conciliatory. He chose to take another pop at his family, and so any hope, and there definitely was hope within Buckingham Palace that once his court case had finished, there might be a way to say, let's try and find a way to repair relationships and move forwards. This has destroyed that.
Because in a way, you could sympathise with him if he'd phrased it like you suggested, because I can't hardly blame him for being paranoid because of what happened to his mother. There could be sympathy for him if only he knew how to access it. I personally was on the cusp of feeling quite sorry for him because I'd be paranoid as well. But he just ruins it by being so vitriolic in the way he says things.
And he's not the only one coming in for some criticism, is he, Richard? The BBC haven't come that well out of this.
Well, the BBC was given this interview by Harry, and the BBC has actually apologised. They've done so because they have very high standards which they failed to meet. And what I mean by that is that they should always give people the opportunity of a response. And so when Harry was making his pretty, wild claims about an establishment stitch-up, they didn't put that to the government or they didn't put that to the royal family, so there was no chance. So Harry, it was a very busy news day. We'd had major elections in Britain, local elections, but the BBC gave pretty much half of their 10 o'clock news to this exclusive interview, and they were clearly so pleased with it that they didn't ask the questions which they should have done. And and Harry should have been put on the spot. It's not good enough just to let him rant and sort of have his conspiracy theories, but they should have got some difficult questions.
I was going to say, just add to that, interestingly, at one point the reporter concerned, who I think flew in from New York to California to do the interview, when Harry kind of talked about these kind of effectively dark forces wanting to harm him, she did say, look, that's a pretty strong claim to make. Who are these people you're talking about? And Harry said, I'm not willing to discuss that at the moment, or words to that effect.
Oh, that's rather ominous, isn't it?
And I think that goes back to your point earlier on, Richard. Could we see another book, another interview, something on the back of it? And I don't think we can rule it out from that point of view.
Well, it's obviously a very heated and fascinating topic, and we will put some links to some of the best articles from the Daily Mail in the comments below, so you can have a look at those at your leisure. Now, I promised earlier that we'd have more royal portraits, and we got not one but two proper paintings this week. Rebecca, tell us more.
Yeah, let's cleanse the timeline, guys.
Deep breaths.
And actually, I think it's worth saying these portraits are connected with a very special event 2 years ago, which was King Charles and Queen Camilla's coronation.
Goodness me, 2 years.
2 years, I know, it's flown by. And interestingly, I did an article in the Daily Mail a couple of days ago around this, but I, with the help of Ipsos, commissioned an exclusive poll about the monarchy and how people have viewed King Charles since he acceded the throne. Actually, it was very, very positive for him. It was kind of overwhelmingly people think he's doing a pretty good job. The monarchy has become more transparent, more open. They did acknowledge, they did say, I think it was 2 in 5, think it's become more divided, but I don't think that's a surprise given what's going on with Prince Harry at the moment. And actually, interestingly, 85% of those who responded said they still think there's going to be a monarchy in the country in 50 years' time. So I think all in all, the king can kind of take quite a lot of heart from that. But yeah, back to your original question, which was...
I love that though, yeah.
And obviously, these questions aren't weighted. We would report them whether they were positive or negative, but actually I think it was generally pretty positive for the king. We saw the official coronation portraits, which have been 2 years in the making because they are huge. I mean, they are proper life-size portraits, one done by 2 separate artists, one of the king, one of the queen, and they were veiled by the monarch and Queen Camilla at the National Gallery this week amid great fanfare. And actually, I think they're pretty good. I think the Queen's is very good, and actually...
Come on, they should be good. They've had 2 years.
There was a very funny moment where, because the Queen's daughter, Laura Lopez, is, very much immersed in the art world, and she was there, and Camilla brought her in to have a look at them, and she went, "Oh, it's very flattering, Mum." And Camilla was just like, "Don't say it's flattering, I love it." So there's quite a nice mum and daughter moment there. And the king was talking how he loved the composition of his. But, I mean, you're always going to get people who like them and don't like them. And royal likenesses are notoriously difficult to kind of pull off. But I think the genuine consensus is they've done a very good job of this.
Richard, there was a lot of engagement this week. That was only one of them. Rebecca seemed to be on most of them. More of that in a second.
So busy, really.
But it does make you wonder, could he be doing too much?
My goodness, yeah. I mean, we've had a busy week. You certainly have. But, the king who is still undergoing cancer treatment it's been non-stop. There have been so many different engagements this week. I mean, obviously, with the VE Day commemorations, it's a particularly busy week. But they do need to be careful. And I know he's determined to do as much as humanly possible. But, we want him to be our king for a long time. Just, don't overdo it, please.
And don't forget, he's announced this week as well, and that got completely lost in all the Harry drama. On Friday, they announced the fact that he will be going to Canada.
Yes, and just for 2 days.
For 2 days later this month.
Oh, that's quite exciting, though.
Yeah.
But I mean, having been down at the palace at VE Day, you could see how genuinely he was enjoying himself. And
really?
Really wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, to him, this is the lifeblood of what he does. I think, as we said on the live programme on Monday, he and obviously the late Queen before him are they're very keen to acknowledge the fact that people who serve in the military are willing to lay down their life for king or queen and country. So, they are very, very keen to pay homage to that as well.
I just thought it was really moving. Well, sticking with the king for a moment now, because we're having a section that we're hastily calling Moments Where the King Looks at Rebecca. It's not a real royal engagement with the King and Queen if our English isn't all amongst it, and it's clear that they do love to see her, as our producer Luke has noticed on a few occasions. Here's last week's event at Windsor Castle, where our King was planting a tree with the King of Sweden. And here he is again on a lovely boat trip up the Thames this week, just checking that Rebecca's still there to capture it all. You are positively blushing, Rebecca. We love that. Look, it's sweet. Look. We're not done with the King yet this week, are we? Oh, no.
No, I mean, he's got a lot to come. And actually, can I just say, I don't think it's so much me. I think this job is very weird sometimes, because I literally spend my days this far away from them, watching them, doing something, then watching me. It's strange, my job sometimes. And so, someone once told me that Prince Harry asked them, this was years ago, why does Rebecca, like the minute I finish talking to someone, why do I always see her run up to that person and then talk to them? And I was like, because that's my job. Because I can't always hear in these big receptions what you're saying, and I actually have to go and ask them what was said. I think that's maybe fundamentally why him and the media never quite got on. But so I think actually it's quite nice for them. There's a few of us that have been doing the job for a very long time, and I think they quite just like to see faces they recognise in amongst this big crowd of people. So it's very kind of you to say it as a compliment, but I think it's more about, oh God, there's someone I can eyeball.
To be fair, the
recognise.
King was on the way to visit a sewer, so probably seeing you was a highlight of the day.
A fragrant moment before we went to visit the super sewer of London. So I tell you guys, you think my job's glamorous?
Well, I happen to have on very good authority that Camilla is a bit of a fan of our Rebecca. So I'm just going to say it, it's true. Anyway, still with the King, yes, I'm afraid so, because Rebecca, when you were out with him, you also noticed an uncanny similarity, didn't you?
Well, it was on this job yesterday that we were on. This is what I love about this job. You never know what you're going to be doing and where you're going. And we were going to visit this super sewer in London, which is a very interesting story about. I'll fascinate you all about it afterwards.
Yeah, don't be jealous, everyone, with Rebecca's tales of visiting super sewers.
But to do it, he decided to get the Thames Clipper Uber boat, which is quite a popular mode of transport now and getting more popular, this big hybrid boat, more environmentally friendly. So we decided to go on the boat, and at one point I kind of was doing a little video on my phone and I just saw his chin jut out and he kind of did this thing with his mouth, and it was like almost like a shiver down my spine. It was like, oh my goodness, you so look like the Duke of Edinburgh when you did it. It's exactly the same mannerism as his father. It took me back to covering engagements with the Duke of Edinburgh.
Well, here they are side by side, so let us know what you think in the comments below. I love these little observations. Oh, but hear that. Did you hear that? It is time for our Unsung Royal Hero of the Week. Richard, you are nominating a royal ex-husband.
Yeah, he's not exactly a royal of the week. He is Queen Camilla's first husband, Andrew Parker Bowles. The reason I nominate him is because he's carried on doing engagements for the royal family. So I noted in my diary that he attended a memorial service to officially represent Princess Anne, actually, one she couldn't attend in person herself.
For Sir Thomas Dunn?
Sir Thomas Dunn, It was at Hereford Cathedral. There were other royals represented too. And it's not the first time that the Brigadier, Andrew Parker Bowles, has represented his old friend and, people say, former girlfriend, Princess Anne. But he has also represented Queen Camilla at events. So it shows you how close they've remained and how loyal he's remained too. So hats off to him.
I love that fact. Now, Charlotte, we could equally mention the Gloucesters, who are again on a foreign tour.
Yeah, they went to Denmark because Denmark were also, like us, celebrating 80 years since their liberation. And yeah, they went to the palace. They saw Queen Margrethe, I think that's how you pronounce it, who has abdicated but is still at all these events. But actually this morning on Thursday, she was taken ill. So, that could be the last time we see her for a few days. And there was the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester doing their unsung hero thing abroad and mingling and they went to a palace, they went to a choral evensong. And hardly anyone noticed, to be honest, but we did.
And we should say the Duchess of Gloucester is Danish.
Yeah.
So,
and actually,
she's very glamorous. She looked fab.
There were a few people who commented, "Oh, why weren't they at Buckingham Palace or the big for the parade on Monday?" And that was the reason why, because they were coming back from Denmark. And also, actually, she was at the first Buckingham Palace garden party of the season yesterday, where they opened the gardens, 8,000 members of the public who were kind of worthy community stalwarts, and we kind of thanked them by having tea and cake and getting the chance to meet royalty. There was a really nice little touch because she was wearing a hat, a little pillbox hat, made by a student of King Charles's King's Foundation, link up with Chanel, their millinery school. So it was a really nice little touch there. Anyway,
that's a good
love
spot.
that. And as I was mentioning, we can't have the Unsung Royal Heroes section of the week without saying something about Princess Anne.
Yeah, I love her. She's just brilliant, and we've actually got a video of it as well. That she was meeting, greeting people at the same garden party as the King and the Queen and the Gloucesters and the Edinburghs, and she met a couple who do a lot of charity fundraising by dressing up as giant ovaries, as in female ovaries. for cancer.
Imagine explaining that to the princess.
And they run marathons, and quick as a flash. I can't remember exact terminology, but she said, thank you very much for not turning up like that today. And obviously everyone was in stitches, and she was just kind of sharp as a tack.
And dry as ever.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw her at VE Day. She was doing a lot of pointing. And with her elbow on the table, I just thought it was such a Princess Anne moment. She was pointing, always like telling people off.
Did you notice her outfit at VE Day as well? She was wearing the military uniform that her late mother wore in the Second World War. And I thought she looked fantastic.
She really did, yeah. Oh, what an amazing week for the royals. Right, well, the Mail's royal podcast, Queens, Kings and Dastardly Things, is back with a look at royal assassination attempts through history. This week's episode features the time that Charles faced down a gunman, how the late Queen Elizabeth handled the gravest security blunder of her reign, and why she never cried in public. It is always a fascinating listen. So search for Queens, Kings and Dastardly Things wherever you get your podcasts. We'll also put a link to that in the description below. Now, Monday's commemorations for the 80th anniversary of VE Day was such an extraordinary occasion that we wanted to revisit it just one more time. Here are some of our favourite pictures from a spectacular and very moving day. I think we can all agree it was an amazing treat for us all to be there on that day. Now, a reminder that a recap of our special live show will play straight after this. My thanks to Rebecca, Charlotte, Richard, and to you, of course, for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.